I am Eleanor Hayes, 66 years old, a retired school teacher who thought the hardest storms of life were already behind me. Yet nothing had prepared me for that October morning when the sound of a suitcase scraping across the hardwood floor cut through the silence of my home. I stepped out of the kitchen, still holding the coffee pot, and saw my son Daniel standing by the door with his hand on the knob. He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the ground, his jaw tight, as if facing me would shatter whatever excuse he was clinging to. "Noah's upstairs," I said, my voice caught between disbelief and dread. My 13-year-old grandson was still asleep then, unaware that his father was about to vanish from his life. Daniel finally met my eyes, but instead of remorse, I saw something hollow, like the person I had raised was gone, replaced by a man I barely recognized. Without a word, he pushed the door open and stepped out into the brisk autumn air, leaving it to slam shut behind him. The walls seemed to echo with that sound long after he disappeared. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the pot. I told myself it was just another one of his reckless choices, a fight with a girlfriend, maybe even an impulsive move he would regret and come back from. But in my bones, I felt it. This was not temporary. This was the kind of leaving that carves a scar you never quite recover from. Upstairs, Noah stirred, calling for his dad. I hesitated, knowing that in a few minutes I would have to tell him the truth, or at least the part of it I understood. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the staircase. I did not yet know how much Daniel had already taken from us, or how deep the betrayal would cut. All I knew in that moment was that something inside our family had snapped, and nothing would ever be the same. The house felt unnaturally quiet after the door slammed shut. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening to the faint creaks of the old wood as Noah shifted in his room above. The smell of coffee still hung in the kitchen, but it seemed out of place now, like a reminder from a life that had just slipped out the front door. I braced myself as I heard Noah's feet hit the floor and his voice call out, hesitant, "Grandma, where's Dad?" I forced my lips into something close to steady before answering. "He left early, sweetheart. Come down and eat something." My words sounded calmer than I felt. Noah appeared on the stairs a moment later, his hair mussed from sleep, his eyes searching the empty space by the door. He lingered there as if waiting for his father to reappear. We sat at the kitchen table, the ticking of the wall clock louder than usual. Noah pushed his cereal around with a spoon and finally asked, "Did he say when he'd be back?" I couldn't answer right away. Instead, I reached across the table, resting my hand on his. "I don't know, Noah, but we'll figure things out." He nodded, but I could see the tightness in his jaw, the way his shoulders squared as though he was already preparing himself for bad news. For all his youth, there was something in his expression that reminded me of a grown man staring down a storm. That look unsettled me, because I knew I should be the shield between him and the world. Yet here he was, already sensing he might have to become his own protector. As the day unfolded, I tried to distract him with chores and stories, but his silence lingered. That evening, as the light faded, Noah looked at me and said quietly, "Grandma, something's not right with Dad. I think I need to see for myself." That night, after Noah had retreated to his room, I sat at the dining table with a stack of unopened envelopes and a gnawing sense that the silence in the house was hiding something larger. The lamp cast a weak circle of light over the paperwork, and my hands shook as I began to sort through bank statements I hadn't touched in weeks. Most of them were marked online only, but one envelope had slipped through. When I tore it open, the number stared back at me like a cruel joke. Our checking account balance was $12 and some change. My breath caught. I rifled through the rest, opening statement after statement, each worse than the last. The college fund I had carefully built for Noah since he was a toddler was empty. A line of credit I had never authorized was drawn to its limit. I felt my chest tighten as if the walls of the room were closing in. Noah appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Grandma, I think we need to check Dad's accounts online," he said. He pulled a chair beside me and, with a confidence that startled me, logged into the bank portal from the laptop Daniel had left behind. I watched his eyes scan the screen, the glow reflecting off his determined expression. Transaction after transaction appeared. Large sums funneled out over the past months to names I didn't recognize. Noah turned to me, his voice steady but edged with anger. "He didn't just leave Grandma. He took everything." The words hit me harder than the numbers. I had clung to the hope that Daniel's absence was a mistake, a rash decision, but staring at the barren accounts, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, cold and deliberate. The next morning, Noah carried Daniel's laptop into the kitchen and set it down in front of me. His face was grim, older than his years. "Grandma, I think you need to see this," he said. I hesitated, part of me still unwilling to peel back another layer of truth. But Noah had already opened the email account. The inbox was littered with messages, and one name kept appearing at the top, Veronica Blake. Each subject line promised something dazzling. Quick investment opportunity. Return guaranteed. Freedom within reach. With a sick feeling, I clicked one open. Veronica's words flowed like syrup. "Daniel, you're so close. Once you move the remaining funds, we can finally start fresh together. Imagine the life you've always deserved, without limits, without anyone holding you back." My stomach churned. These weren't the words of a financial advisor. They were the bait of someone who knew exactly which wounds to press. Loneliness, failure, the ache of wanting more. Noah read over my shoulder, fists clenched. She played him, Grandma. She told him what he wanted to hear. He pulled up another message, this one outlining a transfer schedule, each line showing money siphoned from accounts I had trusted Daniel with. There were even instructions about disguising withdrawals so the bank wouldn't flag them. I leaned back, pressing my hand to my chest. The betrayal doubled now. Not only had Daniel turned his back on his family, but he had done it under the spell of a woman who saw us as nothing more than numbers to drain. Noah looked at me with a fire in his eyes I had never seen before. "She thinks she's clever, but she left a trail. Grandma, I can follow it?" In that moment, I realized my grandson wasn't just angry. He was preparing for battle. The kitchen table soon turned into a war room. Noah stacked envelopes, receipts, and printed emails into neat piles while I fetched an old binder from the closet. Every click of the printer, every sheet sliding onto the stack felt like reclaiming a sliver of control. Noah's concentration amazed me. He highlighted dates and circled names with a steady hand, pointing out patterns I would have missed. "Look, Grandma, same withdrawal amount. Every Friday." She was bleeding the accounts on a schedule. His voice trembled with anger, but his focus never wavered. I sifted through my own papers, pulling out notarized forms for the college account, letters from the bank, even a birthday card Daniel had once signed, which Veronica had referenced in an email. All of it painted a picture of deliberate fraud. My chest ached at the thought of handing strangers pieces of our private life, but I knew the truth had to be exposed. When Noah leaned back in his chair, his face flushed with determination, I realized he wasn't just doing this for money. He was doing it for dignity. For both of us. "Grandma, if we give them enough, they can't ignore it. She won't get away with this. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll take it step by step. Evidence first, then the right people. The clock ticked past midnight, but neither of us wanted to stop. We clipped documents into folders, labeled them carefully, and built a timeline of every dollar drained from our lives. By the time we closed the binder, exhaustion pressed heavy on my body, but inside I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just defense anymore. It was the beginning of our counterattack. By morning, the binder sat heavy in my hands, like a shield. I drove Noah to school, promising him that I would take the next steps. But when I watched him walk through those double doors, shoulders squared like a soldier heading to duty, I knew I couldn't let him carry the weight alone. So after dropping him off, I steered the car straight to the local bank branch. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and paper. I laid the binder on the desk of the branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Carlson, who had known me for years. Her expression shifted from polite professionalism to alarm as she flipped through the documents. Mrs. Hayes, this is serious. I'm freezing these accounts immediately, and will file a fraud alert with the credit bureau today. Hero! Hearing those words felt like someone had thrown me a life raft. For the first time since Daniel walked out, I wasn't drowning alone. That afternoon, Noah and I sat together at the kitchen computer and filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office. We uploaded every screenshot, every bank record, every message that showed how Veronica had lured Daniel into draining our lives. Noah typed with steady hands, pausing only to glance at me, as if making sure I was ready to send our pain into the hands of strangers. When we clicked submit, I exhaled so hard my shoulders sagged. The fight was no longer just ours. It was official. Later that night, as I tucked Noah into bed, he whispered, "Grandma, do you think they'll really do something?" I brushed his hair back from his forehead. Yes, Noah, it may take time, but we've set the wheels in motion. She won't keep bleeding people forever. The first call came 2 days later. A man from the Attorney General's office phoned to confirm receipt of our complaint. His voice was steady, professional, but one detail caught me off guard. "You're not the first to mention a woman named Veronica Blake." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the receiver. Not the first. That phrase clanged in my ears like a warning bell. I pulled the binder closer and began combing through every reference to Veronica, every email signature, every account she touched. Her pattern was clear. She wasn't just after Daniel. She had made a career of preying on people like me, people who trusted too easily, people who thought they were safe in the twilight of their lives. Later that afternoon, I received another call, this time from a woman in Florida who had my number from the complaint system. She was 73, a widow, her voice quivering as she told me Veronica had promised to help her refinance her home. Instead, she had lost nearly everything. As I listened, anger rose in me, hot and sharp. This wasn't just about Daniel's weakness or my empty accounts. This was about an entire generation being hunted by someone who wore sophistication like a mask. That night, I shared what I'd learned with Noah. His young face tightened with outrage. "She's been doing this to other people too? Then we can't stop. Grandma, it's bigger than us now." I nodded, though my chest ached with the weight of it all. "You're right, Noah. We're not just fighting for our savings anymore. We're fighting for every person she thought was too old, too tired, or too blind to notice." It was close to midnight when the phone rang. The sharp sound startled me, and for a moment I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something inside told me to pick up. Daniel's voice spilled through the line, frantic, shaky. Mom, you have to help me. They froze everything. Veronica's gone, and I don't know what to do. My hand trembled around the receiver. I had imagined this moment countless times, his voice full of excuses, maybe even apologies, but what I heard instead was desperation laced with anger. "Where are you, Daniel?" I asked carefully. "A motel off Highway 22, room 14. Please, Mom, just bring some cash. I can fix this if I get one more chance." Noah, sitting beside me at the kitchen table, scribbled the words on a notepad, his eyes blazing. He mouthed, "Call them now." I slid the phone against my shoulder and dialed the police on my cell, whispering the details while Daniel rambled on about his plan to disappear and start over. Every second stretched like an eternity. My son kept talking, spinning dreams of redemption if only I would rescue him. But I knew better. My heart pounded, torn between fury and sorrow. This was the boy I had cradled, the man who had become a stranger, and now the criminal I was leading to justice. "Just hold on, Daniel," I said softly, my voice steady, though tears burned my eyes. "Stay where you are." Minutes later, muffled voices crackled on the police line. "We've got him." I closed my eyes, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening as the sound of my son's pleas dissolved into the clatter of handcuffs. 6 months later, the courthouse smelled of old paper and polished floors, the kind of place where lives are measured in sentences and fines. I sat on the wooden bench beside Noah, his hands folded tightly in his lap. Across the aisle, Daniel shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. For a fleeting second, our eyes met, and I searched for the son I once knew. But all I saw was a man hollowed out by choices he refused to own. The judge's words were steady. "Final, Daniel Hayes, you are sentenced to 5 years in state prison for financial fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy." The gavel struck, echoing like a thunderclap in the silent room. Veronica's turn came next. Dressed sharply even in custody, she held her chin high, but her eyes betrayed her. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, testimonies from elderly victims, and our own binder of proof. She received 7 years for orchestrating the scheme, her polished veneer crumbling as the bailiff led her away. When it was over, the restitution order was read aloud. We would recover a portion of what had been stolen, though the number was far from what had once been ours. Still, when I heard Noah whisper, "At least it's something," I realized the money wasn't the real victory. The true victory was that Daniel and Veronica could no longer hurt anyone else. They had been stopped, held accountable, forced to face the weight of what they had done. As Noah and I stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, a breeze carried the faint scent of lilacs from the courthouse garden. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe without the heaviness pressing down. Spring arrived with a gentleness that felt almost foreign after the storm we had endured. The dogwoods bloomed along our street, their petals scattering across the sidewalk like confetti from a parade we hadn't asked for but somehow deserved. Noah sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, a different kind of fire in his eyes now. "Grandma," he said one evening, spinning the screen toward me, "I built something." On the screen was a simple website. The header read, "Family Finance Watch," and beneath it were tabs labeled Resources, How to Report Fraud, and Protecting Savings. He had even added a section where people could share their stories anonymously. I thought maybe if other families had a place to start, they wouldn't feel as lost as we did. My throat tightened as I scrolled through the clean, straightforward pages. It wasn't flashy, but it was practical, filled with links to government agencies, step-by-step guides, and words of encouragement written in Noah's careful tone. "People will listen to you," I said softly. "No," he corrected, his voice steady. "They'll listen to us. You kept the records. You showed me how to fight with dignity. I just put it all in one place." Within weeks, emails began trickling in from strangers across the state. Grandparents who had noticed suspicious charges, single parents afraid of predatory loans, retirees confused by contracts they didn't understand. Noah answered each one carefully, sometimes pulling me over to help craft a reply. Watching him, I realized our tragedy had planted the seed of something stronger than loss. Out of betrayal, Noah had built a bridge, not only for us, but for others who might otherwise drown in silence. The phone rang on a quiet Sunday afternoon, its shrill tone breaking the peace of a house that had finally begun to heal. I hesitated before picking it up, already sensing who it might be. The automated voice confirmed it. "You have a collect call from Daniel Hayes." For a long moment I stood frozen, the receiver heavy in my hand. My son's name echoed in the air, stirring memories of scraped knees, late-night talks, and birthdays when I still believed I could guide him toward something better. But those images collided with the reality of drained accounts, sleepless nights, and the hollow eyes that had once stared back at me from a motel room. Noah appeared in the doorway, his gaze fixed on me. He didn't say a word, but the question hung between us. Would I answer? My fingers tightened on the phone, then slowly relaxed. I pressed the button to decline the call. The line went silent. I turned to Noah, who was watching me carefully. "Grandma," he asked softly, "did we do the right thing?" I walked to him, resting my hands on his shoulders. His eyes carried both the weight of what he had endured and the hope of what he was building. "Yes," I told him. "We didn't just protect our savings, Noah. We protected our future. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let go of what keeps hurting us." We stepped outside together, the evening air cool against our skin. The sky was streaked with shades of pink and gold, a reminder that endings can be quiet, even beautiful. Somewhere behind prison walls, Daniel would serve his time, facing the choices he had made. But here, in the small yard of our home, Noah and I were free to rebuild, free to help others, free to carry on without shame. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. Betrayal had tried to break us, but it had also forged us into something stronger. And that was the legacy I would leave for my grandson.